Most Americans have never seen empty shelves like this in their lifetime.
Empty, 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 empty.
Empty. Empty. I mean, this part's always empty.
Look at this. Sold out. Can you believe this stuff?
The empty shelves began during COVID, so many people assumed that after COVID, the supply chain would return to normal. But it hasn't. And that's because of problems in the supply chain that will not be fixed soon. The really bad news is that some of the problems might never be fixed. One of the most efficient supply chains in history, the one that helped you score those sweet deals from overseas and kept the shelves stocked at your favorite store, that supply chain is probably never coming back. Both because of how the world has changed and how companies have changed. Craig Fuller, the CEO of FreightWaves, which monitors and analyzes the supply chain, says the well-running supply chain that many of us took for granted, that gave us an economy of superabundance, is basically a memory.
The golden era is probably over.
And it's more than just bottlenecks or a shortage of workers. There are new problems in the pipeline, like U.S.-China trade friction and rising manufacturing costs that have 1/3 of supply chain leaders saying they plan to move manufacturing out of China by next year.
And because of that, there are ramifications for global supply chains. It means that companies are going to have to look or will look outside of China for sourcing product.
Fuller says a big drag on the supply chain is a decision that American companies have made to adopt a new standard called ESG, which stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. Under ESG standards, U.S. companies agree to only get their products from so-called socially and environmentally responsible manufacturers. If a company in China or India is not deemed to be socially or environmentally responsible, the American company must find another source for its product or risk a bad ESG score that has real economic consequences, like losing investors and capital.
If you don't play by our rules, then you're not getting the funding. Banks will be less likely to loan you money for investments or building up infrastructure and all of those things.
Donald Kendall is host of the Heartland Institute's In the Tank podcast and is an expert on ESG.
They construct these series of metrics, this ESG score, where depending on how you check the boxes of all these different metrics, whether it's environmental things, the governance scores, the social metrics and all of that, a company can be punished or rewarded based on them checking off those boxes and not supplying the best products and services.
The traditional bottom line, profits, is no longer the only bottom line. Now there's also ESG.
The problem or the challenge is that if you're going to put that ahead of profits, then you end up having the substantial tax that it takes to do so.
ESG is a big burden on a supply chain struggling to return to normal. Experts say the supply chain will face continuing challenges for decades. At least one of those challenges, ESG, is self-inflicted. And it's consumers who are paying for it. Dale Hurd, CBN News.